Peace, HHDG. We are on another episode of HHDG Media, the podcast. And as always, big shout out to our HHDG Media crew of Rock Vader KB, the Mayor, T. Smith, Skelly Top, and myself, Wiki. Shout out to the Hip Hop Discussion Group on Facebook, checking in, HHDG. What's up? Hope y'all checking out new music as always. Check the website that you see on the bottom, hhdgmedia.com. Check all the latest music as well as our merch. And when we have events, we also will have them up on the website as well. As always, is there a day that new music doesn't come out? Always. Today, Coast Contra dropped another freestyle, The Enemy, over a well-known DSTC track. Go check that out. Now, let's get into our guest for tonight. Both of these MCs come from different states, and they have quite a bit of discography that they continue to build on. And we'll definitely get into how the two of them came to link up. But as far as building that discography, you got to have some skills to be able to build a discography and generate more and more of a fan base. With that discography, it comes some dope skills, and they made some notable networking with some ill producers, MCs, and DJs. Just to name, some of the few people that they work with. Copyright, Gamsoon, Shabam Sadiq, Master Ace. There's plenty more I can mention, but we'll let them talk about that when they get on. But like I was saying, if you have skills, the fans will definitely, recognize that and appreciate that. And with that comes willing to work with other dope MCs. And these two lyricists, not only do they come with the bars, but they come with substance behind it, which we definitely will get into tonight. And it shows in their constant albums that have been put out, mixtapes. It's helped them come to where they are right now. And with that maturity comes another aspect in life that we'll talk about too, in fatherhood. And that shows in the music as well. Now I'd like to introduce, coming out of Los Angeles, Pawz 1.
I was waiting for the theme music. I appreciate you guys having me. Shout out to everybody tuned in and everybody making it happen.
Yeah, I appreciate you tuning in. And we'll have Evolving soon. He's running a little behind right now, but when he comes in, we'll definitely have him come right in and mesh together the same way the two of you have done on Random Acts of Violence.
We'll see how long it takes. Hopefully he don't have no check back. He can get right to it.
Cool. Now, give us a little bit of background. Before your debut album, how was your come up with the mixtapes in the whole LA scene?
So I guess like the short version is I wanted to be considered pretty much an MC, a lyricist. I didn't want to just be the typical rapper from LA doing, rapping about lowriders and shit like that. No disrespect or whatever, but that wasn't really my influence musically. I listened to a lot of different shit. And but I knew that the foundation of everything had to be the bars, the respect, things like that. So I started off just ciphering, going to different places or whatever. But A lot of times I would escalate, turn into battling, and I was pretty good with that. And some of the dudes I was running with at the time, one of them signed me up for a battle, and I never did any of those. It was more spontaneous on the spot, but he started signing me up, and I started winning them and winning some money. And at the time, my son was about to be born, and I was like, yeah, I could use that money, you know. But it was never really my intent to be just a battle rapper and just freestyle and I mean, because you're never gonna beat everybody. It's unlimited. It's cool to keep the sword sharp and things like that, but I already knew like you're gonna constantly be doing that. And I wanted to write songs. That was always my goal. So working on writing, but you know, having life happen. You know, my son was born, I went to prison, got out, uh, working, doing my best, you know, with the life shit, but just constantly writing, trying to write stuff that would have that would resonate, stuff that would last, because that's the music that I gravitated towards, and people were still listening to today, songs that have meaning, substance, like you said earlier. So um, that's basically been the goal. But in the beginning, it was just, you know, you kind of had to fight for your spot, at least in the lane that I wanted to be in. It wasn't, you know, go viral. It wasn't stage something and, you know, go viral, or you couldn't pay for it. It had to be like, yo, that's that dude, or yo, I heard he's better than this one, or yo, they've never been in the same room. Let's see how this plays out. That kind of thing. And it had a certain I don't know, the quality, like it was just, it was dope living it. And it obviously changed and turned into something else now. But that was the beginning, was be as dope as I can be, but write good music, pay dues, and just fight my way through it. Even to this day, like there's some people with a recognition I don't feel has been given. But instead of complaining and being bitter, I just redirect that energy into writing more music.
Right, right. And speaking of energy and what you talking about in the history of just that whole battling, or who you know is nice at in this certain area, that energy of wanting to know who that person is and how their style is, and oh, I can outdo them. You know, it's still competition, but that whole energy, that vibe that's around not just the people, but not the people rhyming, but also the people that are around. You know, giving that word of mouth.
Yeah, that's what made it really interesting too, was there was people that I didn't know were really paying attention. Um, and but they would be at different events, different shows, and they're just fans. But they would go to be around, pretty much be around that fire, warm their hands, and kind of see what was cooking and see what was happening. And and eventually it was like, hey, look, yo, I think you're dope, this and that, blah blah blah. But then the evolution of like, yo, here, take this, you know, here you go. And so now they get to take something home and listen to it,
Right.
and
Mhm.
it's different from, you know, the jokes and the punchlines where there's something in there, you're telling your story or something like that. So, and it's always been and always has been for me, is the people. So when COVID kind of shut everything down, that was a horrible period, um, because, you know, I wasn't able to be somewhere and engage and like interact with people. Um, that's a big part of the whole thing, is just kind of, you know, the exchange of energy, is being able to
Right.
be in the same room where people, talk to them, whether they're fans or not, they know you or they don't. Just that whole thing, and to have that put on hold was kind of weird.
Yeah, it's like a completely new adjustment.
Yeah, I'm glad it's kind of, you know, ending. It's at the end, but yeah, that was. I don't even want to say jail was like that, because at least in jail there's other people. You know, you're showing each other. There's other people in there that write. You're showing each other songs and things like that. Um, but yeah, that was weird. But the energy part is been a big one. So when you're cut off from that, it's really hard to create. You know.
Yeah. Mm. And what was that? What was the CD that you just showed before?
This
I
is
didn't get a good look
actually
at it.
this is Ill Conscious Guy
Oh,
Graham.
that's so conscious. Yeah, yeah, I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, so this I was out there in Baltimore with my boys, the Gods, and Guy Graham's rocked the show with us and gave me some of those. But I still got a CD player in here. This is the one I did with Michael Myers.
Double homicide. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Double Homicide, and I just got a few things. IDE,
ID.
home,
Yep.
yeah, Creative Juices. But yeah,
Creative juice. Yep.
yeah. So
Dope.
just trying to stay busy, you know.
Mm-hmm. Consistent dope. Absolutely. Now here's a blast from the past. Tell us a good story during the verbal virus mixtape time.
You know what's crazy about that was uh it was weird because the people around me were trying to say, hey, look, you need to capitalize on whatever it is you got out here. And it's just a little sub uh genre or a little sub circle of LA hip hop. But they're like, yo, you need to turn that into something. So I started working on a mixtape, and it was only a mixtape. It wasn't blended or anything like that. But it was pretty much like, all right, if this is the first attempt at anything, I try to put a variety on there. So I talked about a lot of different stuff aside from just, yo, I'm better than you. Um, anything like that. It was a good little mix. I approached it more like an album, but at the time,
Mhm.
no one was giving me any beats. Nobody really, I didn't really
Um,
know too many people. So it was kind of like I had found like some Dilated People's beats that I liked, Alchemist, whoever. I was just whatever I liked. And to be honest, I wasn't even really listening to the original versions of the songs. I was just listening to the beat and kind of come with something from my own perspective. And there was a song on there called "You Can't Hide," and it was a battle rap song, but I think Babu produced that for Dilated. Um, then there was a song on there called "Invincible." That was another Dilated beat where I rapped about basically being a football player, and that has roots in like being a kid. So growing up, there's a lot going on in the house. Pretty much every form of abuse. So you kind of like, all right, well, how do I get out of here? And just writing. I love to write. So as a kid, I used to write stories. I used to love sports. So Barry Sanders and Tim Brown. So I would write stories about football players, baseball players, kind of like coming from behind, fourth quarter. So I was able to turn that into a song called Invincible, and that was on the Verbal Virus. But quality was what you'd expect. It's your first thing. You're kind of doing it in the garage. Your boy that's mixing it, it's like his first or second thing. So the quality wasn't there. But I think the hunger is kind of what shines through in the direction. So people heard it, and then I got beats after that. Actually, I went to jail after that, but when I got out, it was like, yo, I got beats for you. I heard this. And
uh,
so I was like, okay, now I gotta really craft this from scratch. Um, So that was pretty cool. And that was the second one. That was volume two. And but again, I try to approach it like an album rather than a mixtape. And I was afraid of the term album, to be honest, because it's so definitive. It's like Illmatic, 36 chambers, like in a chronic. There's like that's your album. And I knew that I didn't have all the elements to create a classic or whatever. So I was kind of afraid of the term, but I ended up just doing it, and I was facing facts.
mhm. Yeah. And you work with a lot of DJs on that first album too.
Yeah, and DJs have always been real prevalent in what I do because that comes from just being within the culture itself. Realizing like doing house parties, it was the
Mm.
uh, it was the DJs. It was the DJs that had the control over the mic music. So they decided whether or not they wanted to open the mic up to. You gonna want 30? No. I was gonna say I could go. I say 20 right now, but just ask me if that's cool. You all right? Sorry about that. My son's getting a haircut.
It's all right.
So yeah, the DJ aspect of it is always been there because, like I said, the house party thing, and if they felt like if they heard about you and they knew you could flow, they'll throw on some instrumentals, Pharaoh Monch, whoever, whatever, and be like, yo, this guy can rap, watch, and then hand you the mic, and then getting pulled into that circle. Like my first manager was a DJ, and he would take me to these. At the time, it was called Cali Kings, and it was Frank V, which is the Baker Boys, that's their brother, who were on Power 106, who
Mm.
had so it just goes deeper and deeper. So the DJ part always played a role. So my producers were DJ slash producers. So to this day, they got to be involved. I don't even like doing shows where I just plug in a USB. I like to have
Yeah, it's not the
that.
same.
It's not the same, and I like to have a set, an actual routine with the DJ. It just makes it more fun to do, more fun to watch. Because when I see performers, new and old, that do that, it's always dope to have the DJ involved.
Yep, absolutely. And what was the chance that you on your mixtape rhymed over Babu, and then on your debut you got Rock Our Science on there?
You know what? I never really connected that until way later. Um, I guess it's kind of like you're just so focused on going. You're to keep going. I didn't really connect a lot of the dots for certain things, like the Master Ace thing. Um, yeah, in retrospect, you look back and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a coincidence, but at the same time, we're kind of in the same vicinity
Right.
and somewhat same circles, definitely now. But yeah, it was real cool because going back to the DJ thing, there was a store called Stacks, and it's called Stacks Vinyl. My boy Breeze and Default worked there, and they were the ones that would have in stores with like Ghostface, and they'd have like Beat Junkie show up and do sets, and it was a hub. So whenever they had something, I think that was one of my first MC battles was there, but that was really cool to be like I rapped on your beats before you knew me, and here we are. Now I was actually I was in the Czech Republic. I was doing hip hop camp with Dilated, and here's all three of them, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. Same year I dropped my first album, so it was like, wow, I went from pretty much stealing your beats to now I'm on a festival with you on the other side of the world. So yeah, it doesn't hit you, like I said, until you really step back and think about it. But it's a blessing for sure.
Hmm. That's dope. Dope, dope. And it's amazing when I look back because I never really paid attention. I've been buying a lot of CDs from the Netherlands label Below System Records for quite some time. And I noticed maybe a few years ago, a lot of your projects were through them.
Yeah. So the way that worked out was when I did Face the Facts, I pretty much had like a demo version of it, and I reached out. I felt like I was confident in it, so I felt like I could pitch it. I shot it to Decon. I don't know if you remember them. Uh,
Yep, I remember.
and like labels like that I felt like I would kind of fit, Fat Beats, things like that. I took my chance. Like, you know what? Let me just send it out. And they heard it and they're like, "Oh, we like this. What are you trying to do?" And we worked it out from there. And ever since then, I've been working with them consistently. I just found that working with labels outside of the US made sense for what I'm trying to do because, to be honest, people here in the States, at the top of their list is just clout, is just numbers, like whether they're real or fake. If they're inflated and they're paid for, it doesn't matter. And a lot of these labels learn the hard way because there was a period of time where they were investing money into artists with 20,000 followers, right? They put out a project, it wouldn't sell. They put them on a tour, people wouldn't show up. It's because those numbers weren't real. They didn't have an actual fan base.
Fan base.
Um, so, but with Below System, it's always cool. I come to them with projects that I feel fit, and I mean that's how this is happening now. This interview, so it's it's a blessing again to be able to work with them for almost 10 years now.
Yeah, that's great, because there's labels that don't even last that long anymore.
That's true. You're bringing up a lot of things that I don't really think about. You know that? That's good. Yeah, because like I said, you're so busy, you're in it, you don't really stop and think, you know. But that's true. A lot of these they come and go, a year or two, maybe 3.
Yeah. And I've been jerked by some of them too.
Man, yeah, yeah, it's bad. It's really bad, and it's gonna continue that way. You know, there's a lot of sharks. There's a lot of sharks.
Not too long after Face the Facts, you had the album with Suplex and Harsh Ramirez and Rusty Jukes.
Yeah, the Death by Stereo.
Yeah.
So that came about. They actually Suplex reached out and asked if I wanted to do a song, and I was a fan of Rusty's, and he had an original version to a record they did called Unfuckwittable, and I was like, "Yo, are you down to remix that? I'll jump on that." And we did that, and then from there, the idea came up like, "Hey, what if we do an entire project?" So then we conceptualized it, kind of made it like an old grindhouse movie type of thing, and got Rusty involved. They produced it all. Harsh rapped on a majority of the songs, and it was like the introduction to the Beat Bruisers as a production duo, and that was really dope. That was really dope because Rusty was able to fly out. He's coming out in a few weeks over here too. We got a show with him, but he was able to fly out, do some videos, and see that there's people out here that still love that grimy hip hop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was dope because I wasn't expecting that.
That was you know, you start with one, and it was like, hey, this is pretty good. What if we do like a whole thing of this? And that's one that I wish we were able to sit together and do it, but it was kind of the email thing. Even though we all live in Southern California, some of it was done remotely or whatever. But I still want to do a project where I'm actually sitting with whoever and do it from start to finish that way.
What was the was it your last project with well, I should say your current project with Evolve? Did you work in person?
Yeah, so the way we did that was, and it was all for the best too, because we were having issues. So I recorded my verses for certain songs. He recorded his, and then we would kind of fill in the blanks and then send references back and forth. For whatever reason, some of the files were lost, and it was kind of a headache. You know, I got a new computer. It was that whole part that, you know, the nightmare. Anyway, he's like, look, bro, what if I just fly out there for like a week and we just do it from scratch? So he came out, and there was some beats that we didn't write to, so we ended up coming up with stuff on the spot, and way better experience. But I like to create like a fake deadline. You know, the party starts at 3, you tell them it starts at 1, because you already know they're not going to get there till 3 anyway. So that's what I like to do when it comes to projects, is create a fake deadline, so that way you kind of feel like it's on your heels at all times. Works to your advantage sometimes, but sometimes it can affect creativity too. So yeah, that's kind of how that one ended up playing out. Um, but it's just more fun that way. Um, an experience that I had like that was with Razkaz, where I was just going to be a fly on the wall for one of his sessions, and he tells the engineer like, "Yo, pull." He had just finished the song, and he's like, "Yo, pull up the such and such beat," and he ends up he's like, "Yo, you got something for this?" And I was like, "Oh shit!" And it's that test, that mythical, the thing they always talk about. Where like, "Yo, here's your shot," and I was like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
I got something for that." And I was able to do my verse for the Adidas album that he put out. But that was another one of those in the studio kind of moments. And I think more magic is created that way. You capture lightning in a bottle like that, because when it's done through email, it's kind of like it's impersonal, of course, but also like there's no room for improv. There's a line on 16 shots where I said, you really want the smoke? We can have that arranged. You try and copy patterns, zigzag, then the patterns change. So I told Evolve, like, yo, say the word zigzag. I wrote the line and he said it, but it was because we were there. So he was able to
Mhm.
kind of stuff like that is how a lot of the older records were made. And that's why they sound dope. Like it just sounds like you're a part of the experience. Other stuff is real copy paste, copy paste.
Yeah,
And but it was a different time.
yeah, and that's similar to in your come up, that whole energy being around other people.
Yeah, it's weird to go from being in a garage with 5 or 6 people working on something to like, oh yeah, just email it to them. And yeah, it's weird, but sometimes it does work. Sometimes it does work, especially if you're with life and scheduling things. Like you're like, you know what, I could knock that out and send it out tomorrow instead of like trying to jump on a plane and go do it. But pros and cons, like anything else.
Definitely. Mm. And which project did you actually reach out to a producer?
You know what? That's a good question. Um, because the first album was done entirely by Breeze and Default. Um, After that, I had a project called More Than Words. It was it was an EP that I put out myself, and in a way, it was kind of like a test for me because I wanted to see like my first album had a cool little push, had a cool little wave, and I wanted to see like, okay, who's really listening. So I had an EP that I put out on my own just on Bandcamp, and I got to see who was like really paying attention. And on
Hmm.
that one, I reached out to. By that time, I'd already traveled a bit, so there was people from Philly, Baltimore, different areas. Um, but there's AWOL One, who's a rapper from out here. Uh, he's definitely a legend. He hit me up. I think it was finally that where it was like, yo, let me send you stuff. As opposed to me reaching out. And you know what's weird is like the beat thing, at least in my experience, was always like, fuck you, pay me, was the approach for a lot of producers. At least, if they don't know who you are or whatever, a lot of them were just like, the price was in the window and that was it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but if it's just a business, then it's just a business. As opposed to somebody coming, plugging in and playing something for you. Um, But I think that's where I'm trying to shift the focus is to create projects with producers, to be able to sit with them and actually work on stuff like Pick Your Poison was done in Switzerland with the Swiss producer, and he did the whole thing, but he had musicians. So one day we'd go and he'd have like, the clarinet player, which was weird because like, or whatever it was. And he had to get the music recorded. And I had never done anything with that many like instruments that played a role. And that was pretty dope. So, but production is, I feel like that's one thing that people have told me that I'm lacking in a sense of like pretty much the name. If there's not a name attached, they don't really give it a shot. Now, if I get a high tech beat or a Pete Rock beat, Marco Polo, whoever that fits my sound, then it'd be like, oh, okay, yeah. But I can get a guy who's, I'm not gonna say as good, but as good, or just doesn't have the same marquee value, who's on the come up, and it doesn't ring bells, so they're not really gonna give it a spin. But like with the 16 shots, that's produced by EQ, who's here in LA. I like that beat. Preed One did some production. He's up there in Bakersfield. Um, I think pretty much all the producers on Random Act of Violence are from California, to be honest. I didn't catch that.
Sorry, I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it mainly from California, because when the album first came out, I didn't see the production credits, so I started going on your IG and I saw
Okay, yeah.
each producer on each post, and then I was looking them up and everything. Yeah,
And you know what? That wasn't intentional, because we have people from all over. And that's one thing too, is like to this day, people want to send me beats, and because I'm in that transition phase of like, hey, look, I can't listen to 80 beats, you know. I don't like, it's time consuming, and then also like you just sending me a beat, that's not where I'm at. Like I want to create something from the ground up with the producer,
right.
as far, even if it's a single, um, all the way down to the PR campaign, the music video. Like I like to have them involved, because some of them are treading water too, because they don't realize the business aspect. You know, some dudes want money up front, other dudes know about the back end. But yeah, for me, it's more or less like, let's build something, as opposed to hopefully I rap on that beat. And I don't want you calling me every week to see if I wrote to it. That gets annoying, you know. But I have some stuff that I 5, 10 years old that's really dope, but I don't even know if those people make beats anymore. And it's 2-track. A lot of people don't know about this, but somebody sends you an MP3, there's not much you could do with it. There's no, you know, kick, snare, hi-hat, sample, bass line. You can't really do anything and turn it into a song. It's basically just raps on a beat, and that's it. It's a bologna sandwich. It's not too much, you know. Not to say it's not, you're not going to do your best to make it the best, but it's totally different when you have somebody who's chopping the onions and really making, you know, putting love into it.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting that when you mentioned on Pick Your Poison, the producer VR, if I'm is VR, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. You know, they use instruments when you made that album.
Yeah. So um, a good example of that is on the song with Master Ace. It's called Flip Side. So he's rapping about being a rapper that's like on top, you know, and I'm the broke rapper, you know, busboying at a restaurant, and you know, just two sides to the story. And on that one, the beat that I had sent Ace to write to, um, I guess there wasn't like, there was an instrument that was added later when I sent
Mhm.
him back a reference, and Ace was like, "Yo, that wasn't in there," and I didn't even really pay attention because it was subtle. It was real subtle, and that opened my eyes to the music part a little bit more. But yeah, he got people to play because he's right there. I think it's the Montreux Jazz Festival. So there's a lot of musicians that move out there, and he's down the street from there, so he's able to pull different people,
Wow.
bass players and things like that, people in town. So that one was different. It wasn't the typical, you know, uh, chop sample rap. He had some stuff
That's cool.
played on there.
Mhm. It looks like we have Evolve checking in. Peace, Evolve. Can you hear us?
Yo, yeah.
There you
Okay.
go.
Yo, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we hear
Oh,
you
there you
good.
go, bro. Sorry, I'm running through a fucking airport, man. I'm like wind sprinting over here and shit, dude. Try not to miss my next
It's,
flight.
it's
There's
all
no
right.
excuse, bro. There's no excuse. All right.
Yeah, I
you
know,
could
dude. I'm sorry. I'm bad
You're
at this
coming
shit,
back
bro. I'm
from
bad at this rap shit, man.
you're coming back from Kansas City, right?
I'm barely heading to Kansas City, bro. I've been stuck at airports all day. Like
Oh
damn.
man.
my first flight got canceled, and it was a shit show, dude. So I ain't getting to Kansas City till like 11 or midnight.
So that means you got time. Hit him with the questions. Hit him with the questions.
Yeah, hit me with a question so I can divert them back to Pawz and shit. You know what I mean?
All right.
As the man with
let's
all the
start
answers, I'm just along for the ride, man.
Tell us about Ev, the word nerd.
Stupid name I came up with. One of my first rap names, I guess. My first rap monikers. Where I equivalent.
I think we lost you.
Oh man. The airport service. Horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that kind of reminds me of like my rap
Take that
name.
bar verse. You know what I mean?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, you're going in and out.
Yeah, I don't know if this is gonna work.
He probably got to find a good spot for his signal.
I could text him. But yeah, so with my rap name, I pretty much like I used to do graph. I've told the story a billion times, but it's not that cool. You know, the name itself is like, you know, I always wanted to come up with something cooler. You know, like it's just I never really put too much time into it. It was already too late. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna fucking run with this. And to this day, you know, people will send me shit and it's like a pet shop or like a pet grooming service or something like it's pretty funny to see that. Yeah, I'm just gonna text him and tell him that I'll knock it out. So that way it's not a lot of back and forth. I don't know if you edit this, so
Yeah, we can edit it.
okay. Yeah, I think it shut down anyway.
Yeah, I
Where
think
did
it's
we leave off? We were talking about the
I was talking about the
production,
instruments.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, working with different people, like I'd like to, you know, the bucket list is, you know, Primo at the top. Working with Evidence right now, hoping to have that record done soon. But there's certain people that I definitely want to work with. And what's weird is it's kind of like it almost reminds me of like being a sports fan back in the day. I was like, how come Barry Sanders, Dan Marino, like how come these people don't have rings? How come they never it's on the wrong team, I guess. Like the line, you know, you got some nice players, they're just on the wrong team. But at least to certain fans are like, yeah, man, it's dope, but you know, if you were to get the right beats, and it's an insult to the people I'm working with, because I'm like, yo, it's not that it's not good, but it's not the same to them, because they're used to hearing, you know, a certain caliber MC on a certain person's beats, and in their mind, if they put you at that same level or near it, they want you to be on that production, and that's a compliment. But it's not that easy. You know, these people are busy, or the budget is just not there. And it's not what it was, where somebody would hear you somewhere and invite you to the lab. It doesn't really work like that. Not like before. It still happens, but not as often, you know?
And while we're on the topic of production, you work with the Berlin producer, DJ Dista,
Yeah.
for Watch and Learn. You know,
Yeah.
I discovered him probably, it's 2022 now? Maybe about 9-10 years ago when he dropped the album.
That was the role with this, right?
Yeah, yep. There you go.
Yeah. Horrible business acumen. Because I remember we had the same manager. And I was like, bro, how do you have an album with KRS and Cool G Rap and Cool Keith, and that's just the case? How do you have all these people and like the album's not moving? I think what it was he didn't really like, he didn't really care to learn any of it. And one of those people that quits and then starts and then quits and starts. I should have saw all the red flags. But anyway, the label was like, hey, management was like, hey, you guys should do something. And we finally ended up working on it. Bro, I cannot stress to you how horrible the process was. Like, I'm going to say a 3.5 year period of time. And I don't mean consistently working on music. I'm saying, dude, supposedly lost files, computer crashed, you name it, alien abductions, all of that, everything happened. And it was like, come on, bro. Like, in a way, I think he was intimidated, but he didn't want to admit it. So I found out later that from another artist that he worked with, what he was doing was he didn't have the confidence. So he would send you a beat, you would complete a song, and then he'd want to remix that song 4 or 5 times, the same record, not realizing like, yo, it doesn't have the same feel. And because you're writing to certain elements in the beat, there's a certain energy in there, and 1 or 2 if you get close to it, okay. But he was doing multiple versions and I didn't know about it. And when I finally asked him, like, yo, why you do that? He's like, well, Jay Dilla did it. And I'm like, well, you're not Dilla. You're not Dilla. So like, and it was weird. So by the time the album was completely done, what's whack is I got a finished mastered version from the label, and there was like 5 beats on there I had never heard in my life. And the feeling wasn't there. And this is just my opinion, because the average fan doesn't know. But that was a learning experience, working with producers, where you're like, okay, I should have just did a single instead of being committed to doing an entire project. I lost a good 3 years of time working with that guy. And so now I think that's kind of why I'm a little more guarded when people hit me up to collaborate, even if it's just for a verse or to do a single or anything. Because I mean, my son's already almost 20. He's going to the Navy. He's going back to the Navy. He's going to Japan in a few days. So I got a limited amount of time to spend with him before I don't see him for, a year. So I don't want to rap on a song that nobody's gonna hear. Like, I could spend that time with him watching a game or whatever. But that's how I look at it.
Wow, I had no idea. So when the final album for Watch and Learn came out, how many songs in there were completely different?
At least 5. So I can't think of them all off top, but I know for sure one of them was a song with Acrobatic. So there was a version of the song where the beat, it reminded me of like the X-Men, like the cartoon, like from the 90s. It just had it was like an action. It just action, if I could describe it in one word. And that's what me and Acrobatic wrote to. So he had sent me another version way later. And he said, oh, I don't have, this was the game he played. Oh, I don't have the stems for that. So, I can't do anything with it. And I told him, well, just leave it as is then. It fits. And he bullshitted with that song for a while, and then made another version. And then finally, the album comes out, and it's something totally different. And yeah, it was bad. It was bad because at that point we weren't even talking anymore. Like, to this day, like, I don't want anything to do with that dude. That's why that album wasn't promoted that well, and that doesn't fall on the label. He didn't do his part. And again, going back to his album, he didn't promote that album. And I honestly didn't want to carry the promotion on my back and make this guy popular or expose him to new markets and fans if he don't give it.
He's not going to push.
So yeah, it's crazy. That was I'm actually remixing that entire project. So I have every song done except one. But yeah, that's something I'm probably gonna put out as an NFT. And that one I have producers from all over. So I'm looking forward to that one. But I'm trying to take my time with it.
That's ill. Definitely ill. Mm-hmm. Now back to your debut. Just recently, you released a songbook for Face the Facts. What was your drive to release that now? Or was that
There was
something that's always, no, I was gonna say, was that something that you was always thinking of doing?
you know what? Being a fan, I would this is way back. I used to print out lyrics to people's songs when I was younger, and just to kind of study them, and just seeing like, wow, this is how he structured it, or and then finding stuff, or you know what, even going as far back as vinyl, or pulling the sleeve
Mm-hmm.
out and the lyrics are on there. Um, I was always a big fan of that, and I realized the anniversary was coming up, and I was like, you know what, I got to do something. So I was like, you know what, let me see if I could make that make a book just for this album, because a lot of people were asking me about particular songs. They would always like bring up, to this day, 8 years later, people will ask about certain lines, and I kind of wanted to give insight on what inspired me to write it.
Mm-hmm.
And to face the facts, the whole idea was, um, everything was escapism. It kind of still is. And this was like face the facts, like face reality. And these are all faces on the cover of the album that faced adversity and did their thing. So it's kind of, a couple meanings. But I wanted people to know why I chose Tyson, or Richard Pryor, or Santana, or Kurt Cobain, or whoever. And it wasn't just like, hey, these people were popular, you know who they are. It's like, no, this is what I thought and what I felt when I saw their work, or I heard their stuff, how they inspired me. And I try to put all that in one book and keep it extremely limited, so only the real fans would get it.
Absolutely.
And there's under 50 made. I discontinued them, but what's cool is there's two things I discovered putting the book out. Um, and shout out to my sister Darlene. She helped me put it together. I got a shitload of typos. I wish I would have had her proofread it, but I basically I noticed that there was a few people that were buying books for their kids, because I would personally write in them and dedicate and draw in them and things like that, and it wasn't their name, and they're like, "Oh no, that's my kid." A few people, and I was like, "Wow, that's cool," because in the future, when they get old enough to understand, it's going to be something like, hey, I got this made for you from this guy. These are his lyrics. You know who these people are. You've seen that guy in this movie or whatever. But this is something that, like, a time capsule in a sense. And
Yeah.
I had a couple people buy some for they're like historians, like hip hop historians, and they've added me to the collection alongside like the Wu manual and things like that. So that's an honor. That's a big one for me.
Man, that's dope. When it comes to music like that, and then being able to go to another format with the book and reach even more people that are in a completely different generation, you know, that's a beautiful thing right there. And
It is.
you being a father, I'm sure that touched you in a certain way as well.
Because it was again, I don't really put a lot into well, this is what it's going to mean. And sometimes that works for me and sometimes it works against me, but in this case, seeing it and then seeing a picture of the kid with the book, and then you're like, wow, like that, he knows one or two faces on there, Biggie, um and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. And the ones he doesn't know, I'm able to say, like, I was at least a part of keeping those legends, like reintroducing them
Hmm.
to a newer generation. And if I fall even at the bottom of that list, or if I'm on the list at all, that's an honor for me. But in a sense, it was just paying homage. That's all I really wanted to do. but having the lyrics in there and things like that, hopefully if they decide to rhyme or whatever they decide to do, they can see what was put in there and the meaning, behind certain lines that are in there. Um, but yeah, it definitely it made me feel real good to see that. Like it kind of inspired me, to do more, to write more.
And while we're on the topic of fatherhood, I understand what my two sons growing up and seeing, certain things that they do. It brings me back to a certain way. But at the same time, I know an adult with the maturity, I can't do things a certain way.
Yeah, yeah,
It's still, it's like, a learning process in a way. At the same time, you appreciate seeing how they do things from your eyes.
yeah. A good example is music itself. So like, my son, I never really forced the hip hop thing on him. I kind of wanted
Yeah.
him to discover stuff on his own because that's part of the experience where he found it and like, yo, have you heard this? And it puts a smile on your face because you're like, wow, how do you even know who that is? Right. And I wasn't telling him, yo, you have to go listen to this. You can only listen to this. So I left it open. But to see him come back and plug in his phone or Bluetooth and play like an old dirty bastard song that I
Mhm.
never heard. And I'm like, wow, like where'd you find this? Oh, I found it here, whatever. And so music is a big one. It plays a part in his life. He's to this day, he makes beats. But he was in band in high school and things like that. So it's always been there. But that little experience has been cool for him to show me new music. And it's stuff that I know. Like, how do you know what it
Yeah, and that's great bonding too.
is? Yeah. Priceless, priceless.
Yeah, because my oldest son right now, he's been discovering certain '80s music, from whether it be pop or hip hop, and he listens to it. I'm like, yeah, I know who that is.
Yeah, that's cool.
But just to see him jam into it, it's great to see that because
Yeah.
everybody's always downplaying how the youth is and all the music that they listen to is trash. But just let them discover a lot, and then you talk to them about it, and they'll it just opens up a bigger conversation.
Yeah. That was one thing, like my son, like he would early on, because his mom listens to a certain style of music or whatever. So when he would come to the house, I would let him play it or whatever. I didn't really talk too much about it. And he would ask, you like the song? And I'm like, I'm not really a fan or whatever. Uh, but then when he hit a certain age, he would be like, man, I can't believe I listened to that. And I think we all have music like that. But um, I wanted him to develop his own palette for it. And I didn't want to be like, oh, that's all trash. This is all trash. Because there's some stuff that like maybe at first listen, I didn't really tune in. And I would ask him like, he would tell me a story about a certain song, like, oh, I listen to this when I feel like this. And I'm like, okay. So then I might find new music that he doesn't know, and then I'll show him. And then, I listen and he might know it's kind of a reverse where he knows the artist but doesn't know the song. So that
Yeah.
whole experience has been cool.
Hmm. And speaking of experiences, DJ Premier played music off of Random Acts of Violence. How did that feel?
That was that was really dope. I think the first thing of mine he ever played was it was the first port. No, it was Shot for Shot off of the Double Homicide with Michael Myers. But it was one of those. I had to wake my girl up and like she knows who Primo is. Um, but it was like, look, 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 and almost like I made it in a way bucket list. Like, you know, I mean, I'd love to do a song with him, but to at least say that he played it, he gave it a listen and felt it was worthy of throwing in the mix. And
Yeah.
that was really dope. Like, so it's definitely bucket list. Like that was really cool. That was really cool.
The acronym Featured Unreleased Collab Collection.
Yeah. So at the time, uh, I think it was I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take all the collaborations I've done and put them together. My boy, he put out a project called what's it called? Feature Presentation, and he had the movie theme, and I was like, man, that's dope. I wish I thought of that. And some artists have those featured albums where it's a concept and it's really dope. I couldn't think of anything, so I said, fuck it. And then I was like, all right, well, let me see if I can turn that into something. And then I doing graffiti, so like our crews, your crew means something. So I broke it down in like collection spelled with a K. So the first one was fuck, featured unreleased collab collection. So it was songs that weren't out, original versions, things like that. And then I was like, all right, it's time to do volume 2. What do I call it? Fuck it, issue 2, because it's a comic book theme. So I don't know what I'm gonna call the third one. I'm still thinking about that one, but those are basically like records that uh people asked me to be a part of as far as the features that didn't appear on any of my stuff, and I was able to grab some of them, put them together. And then there was some stuff that I wanted people to hear the original versions of, and put that on there. And then some stuff that was never released for whatever reason, sneak some stuff on there. So yeah, that was one of those things. Like I can't see myself ever doing the greatest hits. I don't know. I think that's kind of weird because people make their own playlists, so that pretty much is your greatest hits. Like if they're working out certain songs and you're in it, there you go. But people have their favorites. It's all subjective. But on that one, it was a bunch of collabs.
And being that you are a man of the culture, the essence, speaking of reading them liner notes back in the days, I think all of your projects have had a physical version.
I try to. I really, really fight for that if I'm working with a label or a producer or whoever, because I think a big part of it is it's kind of like when somebody tells you about a family member or a friend of theirs or somebody, and they got to tell you about them because a picture doesn't exist. And then, finally, like somebody finds an old picture and they're like, oh, this is what your uncle looked like, or
Mhm.
this is what she looked like. And then like to have it, to physically have it, and like, wow, this person, it's an artifact. It's like proof of existence in a way. So a day is gonna come where it's gonna be in a box in somebody's garage and their kid's gonna go through it the same way vinyl is now. And they're gonna go through grandpa's collection and be like, what is this? You know? And then turn it around and then throw it on and skim through it and like, oh, this can I have this, grandpa? And I'll
Yep.
be old. I'll be old somewhere. Uh, maybe get booked for a show and rap in a chair for my whole set. But whatever it is, but it's cool to know that you're gonna be immortalized and it exists in a physical form. That's why I try to do tapes, CDs. And what's funny is like people would always say like, oh well, nobody listens to tapes anymore. Nobody cars don't even make CD players. Records don't sell. Nobody has a turntable. But how is it that past 2 years have been the highest selling years for vinyl in I don't know how many years? And
Yeah.
indie bands and indie hip hop acts, we've kept vinyl alive forever, and the fans themselves, of course. So that's why I always fight to have something. And good example, I'll wrap it up with this. My boy called me. I hadn't talked to him in a while, and he was like, "Yo, do you have any tapes?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got a box somewhere, shoebox, Ice Cube, whatever." And he's like, "No, no, no. Do you make tapes of your music?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know what? I do. I got this one and this one." And he's like, "All right, cool. My car got totaled. I had to buy a truck, and all it has is the tape player. And I ran through my 4 or 5 Ghetto Boys, whatever tapes he had in there. I'm gonna stop by and grab some." So that was cool because it's like he's listening to new music in the truck, and it's mine. We grew up together, so that was pretty cool.
That's dope. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely, man. Yeah, I have I think I have a few of your projects on almost every format, vinyl, CD, and cassettes. I think
Appreciate it.
I still got to go pick up the Double Homicide.
That one, the vinyl should be out next month, and I won't have copies in the United States till June, but
Mhm.
most system will have them, I think, in a few weeks, hopefully.
Okay.
And we did tapes for that. We did a limited run of CDs on that too. But yeah, I'm trying to do that for everything. Random Act of Violence, same thing. CDs and the vinyl were in the works, and tapes as well.
On Random Acts of Violence, you had a remix. I'm not. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the producer's name right. Is it Disease or Disease?
It's Disease, and you know, it's the hip
Okay.
hop shit where you spell your name
Hmm.
like.
Yeah.
I never really asked him why he spells it like that, but um, he's a guy that I actually reached out to. I seen him doing a lot of producer showcases out here, and I heard him at one or two, and I was like, "Yo, he's really dope." But a lot of those guys don't know how to structure their beats for songs, so they're kind of like beat battlers and things like that, and that's dope.
Mhm.
But it's the same as a battle rapper, where some of them don't know how to write 16 bars or create a chorus or whatever. So I hit him up, and I was like, "Hey, I have this. Would you want to remix it?" And he shot me a couple. He said, "I think this is kind of in that lane." And he had a favorite, I had a favorite, so we ended up voting, and we picked the one that made it on the album, Holograms and Holotips.
Definitely feeling that one, and it does give a different feel from the original. Because what I do is whenever I go through the album, those are the two that usually I go back to back and then just listen to them.
Okay, so
Once
you like
again.
to you like to compare them. And you know what, I used
Mhm.
to do that too. When they used to do the cassette singles, the singles, and they'd have like, you know, the original remix, and then they'd have like extended version
Oh
or the
yeah, the
DJ
maxi
mug.
singles. Yeah.
Yeah, so then you'd listen to
Hmm.
all of them, and then you'd pick, you know, because the one that's on the radio, you're like, yeah, I've heard that a billion times, but for whatever reason,
Yeah.
this one sounds a little darker, a little more sinister. I kind of like this one better. So that's what's cool about this too, is being in control of the music, where I can pretty much do that with different producers.
Yeah. And one last thing about the latest album features. Yeah, copyright on there.
Yeah, copyright's really dope. He's he's been uh he's been on a list of somebody to work with for a while. I actually did a song with him and Main Flow, and that was a few years ago. I think it's on the first Fuck album, and that was produced by Verbs. And I really liked that song that we did. The beat was dope. Everything, the scratches, everything, you know, fit together. I wanted to film a video, but I think Main Flow was doing he's doing a lot of acting, and it's funny because Copyright is currently doing a lot of acting, getting into that. But on
Hmm.
this one, we're linked together on Instagram. So he had posted something, and I was like, you know what? Let me send it to him and see what he thinks. So we were able to get him on there. Our approach was, we didn't have a song with the back, you know, the back to back, and I felt like it was lacking. Evolve felt like it was lacking, so we're like, yo, let's make this the one, because if it's your 16, his, and then mine or whatever, it's kind of boring. So let's see if we could go back to back, then him, then back to back, and kind of break it up a bit, you know? So
Uh,
that's the approach that we took. Um, I wish me and Michael Myers were able to get into the lab and do a song like that on Double Homicide, but scheduling and things like that, we weren't able to have that back to back track like that. We did that on a earlier song on Pick Your Poison, the Myth and the Legend. But yeah, Copyright. Shout out to him. Trying to see if we could do a tour with him actually.
dope. Mhm. Yeah, definitely would look forward to that. Definitely came over on that old Megahertz crew too. Man.
Yeah, deadly, deadly. I think
Yeah.
I used to have their wax and just be rapping over their instrumentals. And again, it goes full circle because then here you are, pretty dope.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, with random acts of violence, I feel that you're hitting on all topics that should be addressed. And, a lot of people want to be politically correct and kind of candy coat things at times, but y'all just let it out there.
Yeah, I think, they can't really blackball us. That's the kind of the blessing that goes along with the curse of being underground. When you're underground, like, not a lot of people know you, but at the same time, you're not being overly censored. So you don't got to worry about a sponsor or somebody, losing 10,000, 20,000 or whatever. You can't say that. You got to change that line. That's not the case. So, and that's not in us in general. So that's why we came the way we did. And the way I put it before was the project itself is basically like a punch in the mouth. If all the stuff that's going on in the world is it's just yapping, our response is just punch in the face instead of sitting there trying to debate certain topics and be politically correct. Like you said, we just hit you with our side of it. So one of the ones somebody had asked about recently was a project called Mayhem.
Oh,
And
that's one of my favorites too.
thank you. And that one, the hook is like the flags on fire. Below minimum wage is like the flags on fire. Put our children in cages like the flags on fire. So that's pretty much like it's political, but like that wasn't the intent. It's just anger, really, because there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, so the stuff I say in there about you know about people's MAGA hats and like I said, we're more like Grand Poobah, they're more like Grand Dragons. Give them
Dragons.
a clue, Klux Klan and
Klux
White Sheep.
Klan. Yeah.
So like
That was
it
dope.
was great. Thank you, thank you. So it was one of those things where it's like I'm gonna still try to make it a little witty, so it's not just a bunch of anger just yelling at you. But yeah, there was stuff that just had to be said, and we weren't gonna pull no punches at all.
Man, I wish Evolve had the chance to speak as well, but I'll definitely invite him to come back. So
Yeah,
thank you again, Pawz, one for taking the time to speak on
nah, I
not just
appreciate.
random acts of violence, but life and all your music.
Now, I appreciate your time too, giving us a platform to reach new people. Whether they listen to the album or not, if it just gets them familiar with the name and down the line they end up listening. But big shout out to everybody checking this one out and supporting what you do and giving artists like myself a platform.
Definitely. And I'm gonna put link in the comments for everyone to go check that out. There you go. And as always, when we have our guest on here, the floor is yours to give your shout outs.
I think I did that. Shout out to everybody checking it out. You know what? Big shout out to Evolve for doing his best. There's been a few interviews where things don't pan out, but I'm trying to bring him over into this side of things because he's got a real interesting story to tell and a good perspective. So we're gonna do a follow-up to Random Act of Violence. We're trying to get it produced entirely, maybe by somebody like Stu Bangers or somebody like that, and have that out in the future. But shout out to him and everybody that supports what I do, past, present, and future. If you're hearing this later, I'm grateful to be able to do it and to have people like yourself actually, buy copies and afford me the opportunity to lock myself in the lab and write and give it 100% of my attention to always give them my best. So I want to thank everybody that does that.
Definitely. I appreciate, the music that you continue to put out. And as always, continue to support what you're putting out. Continue to share it.
Thank
Let the
you.
world
Appreciate
know. Once again, Shout out to Pawz One. Shout out to Evolve. Evolve, we definitely gonna have you back on the show, you know, when everything is all settled with you. And once again, HHDG Media. I'm gonna say peace.
Peace.